Welcome back, everybody, to a special edition of Sun Journal Sports Talk. I'm Justin Pelletier, special. Joined here by Cal Oaks and Kevin Mills. We're here to talk about some Western Class B basketball, the girls' side of things, heading into tournament week. And let's start where Class B discussions often start here at the Sun Journal, whether it's football or any other sport, and that seems to be Mountain Valley. And we'll start with the girls, the Lady Falcons.
Mountain Valley, well, they got a nice tune-up for the tournament in the MVC championship game with the 45-41 loss to Jay. That game didn't go quite as well as they wanted it to. They didn't shoot the ball particularly well, especially in the first half. And by the time they started doing the things that they like to do and driving to the hoop and hitting some threes to get themselves back in the game, it was a little bit too late. But, of course, it's a totally different. It's a jump from the Mountain Valley Conference to the Western Maine Conference teams that you're generally going to see in the Western B tournament. So that's the thing that we need to keep in mind for both Mountain Valley and Lisbon in this tournament.
I'm going to say Lisbon also involved in this tournament.
It's kind of the opposite of what you see in Class C, where the MVC teams
that.
dominate. It's a step up for our B teams to go down there and compete.
Yeah, Mountain Valley has been there fairly regularly. They haven't won quarterfinals. Actually, they've only won 2 quarterfinals in their history. One, I believe it was 2002. Was the last one. They're a good team. They've been playing very well. They won 9 straight to end the regular season. They had the best defense in the Mountain Valley Conference at about 30 points per game. So they go in with a pretty good team chemistry and a pretty good amount of confidence going into that tournament. I think probably they're better prepared than they have been the last few trips, but they're still going to face some pretty good competition. They've got Grey New Gloucester in their first game. I think that's a good matchup for them. Gray's a defensive team, not a real offensive powerhouse, but they're going to battle you, and I think that'll be a good game.
How much of an advantage is it for a team like Grey New Gloucester to have played in the Western Maine Conference? Because certainly that seems to be where all the power is, especially with York being undefeated the way they are.
It's a very different style, and I know coaches who coached in the MVC and then went to Western Maine, and the style is different. The Western Maine tends to be a bit more of a half-court kind of game, and so you don't see the pressing and the defensive man-to-man kind of pressure that you see in the MVC. So that's different, and obviously the bigger schools, and they seem to have bigger players sometimes. The Western Maine teams, typically the good ones like the Yorks and the Greeleys tend to have 1 or 2 or 3 6-footers.
They always have someone like Joanna Brown from the 90s in the middle. Whenever they have one of their vintage teams, they have that 6-foot center they can go to.
And York has 2 of those right now, so I think that's a factor too. And they're used to playing they're used to playing mostly B competition, whereas the MVC schools, majority of their games are against C schools.
And there always seems to be a disparity, whether it's in basketball or in any other sport where there's an open or a tournament scenario like this, where you generally have the Telstars and the Jays and the Livermores are your stronger teams in the MVC, but they're C schools. So when a Mountain Valley has to end up playing in a tournament, they see competition they just haven't seen before.
Well, soccer is a perfect example because the Western Maine schools will be playing A and B schools in soccer, which are some of the best soccer programs in the state, whereas the MVC schools, whether they be B schools or C schools, they're playing mostly C competition, and that's a big difference.
And it certainly helps the C schools, which we'll get to in another segment. Helps the C schools, but not so much the B schools in this kind of scenario. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate the time and the effort here for the Western Class B preview as we go towards tournament week. We'll be back with previews for Western Class C and Western Class D, as well as a host of boys previews coming right up here on Sun Journal Sports Talk. For now, I'm Justin Pelletier, joined by Kevin Mills and Callie Oaks. Thanks for joining us.